Take two. Um, this Simon is on why propaganda is evil. Introduction to it is propaganda can be a deliberate use of misinformation, of ideals, opinions, and biased or misleading information to influence the public's perception of events in favour of a particular agenda or ideology. It can be a deliberate use by individual organisations and governments to make public manipulated to advance political agendas and influence political beliefs and ideas. The negative effects of propaganda in society come from the ability to control and manipulate aspects of human communication and connection with society. Propaganda can operate through a combination of media, including print media, advertising, political campaigns, social media, education institutions. It can manifest the channels of communication to find a large audience and to influence their beliefs, attitudes, and understanding to promote propaganda. Also, propaganda is very misleading in society because of its nature to manipulate individuals. It can use a variety of techniques. The presentation of material and information appeals to emotions, so emotionally it can affect people. Its repetition is a way of achieving the goals of a particular agenda. Propaganda can destroy the cognitive thinking process as emotional effects take effect and cause fears and effectively make people follow and obey with rhetoric speeches. The persuasive rhetoric of propaganda in society can make individuals believe in opinions, and the promotion can be a major force in spreading fear. It can promote evil, destroying democratic views and a civil society with its agendas, such as Hitler did with the Jewish people as he wanted to establish his world with rhetoric and have control of a one world nation. Understanding propaganda. Now, how to understand propaganda? Propaganda gives misleading information to society to spread false information about its existence, its agendas. Analysing or researching the understanding of propaganda can help to explain why it can be used to give positive and believable responses to why a country can be controlled by organisations like political parties. An example is the Nazi Party in Germany during World War II, with all the hatred speeches and believing with the rhetoric speeches that Germany was going to be a one world nation because they wanted to rid the Jewish, black people with disability. They wanted to have a control world. Political ideas is defined by politicians and groups to create a favourable public opinion and support specific ideas and policies. The media, from newspapers to internal, can influence with powerful messages, which allows propagandists to manipulate individuals with speed. The manipulation of truth can undermine cognitive and critical thinking, which promotes a society and a culture of false information. It's a apparent psychological approach in emotional manipulation that can lead to fear and anger, which clouds public perception by making strong emotional responses from people and a sense of righteousness for their country, a patriotism, so that their country is number one, and what they do for it will be such a favour, and they'll be good people. What propaganda does to the individuals and society is to exploit social interactions and share attitudes and beliefs, making people from susceptible to rhetoric speeches to promote propaganda agenda. Now, another important factor is the distortion of truth and reality. Propaganda distorts truth by creating manipulated information and drafting narratives that will cause people's perceptions towards trusting false information to create in reality to people. The lies and false reality delivered to individuals to influence this agenda, to individuals accept the lies, false reality through repetition and reinforcement by media that influences society. That this technique that propaganda uses are a context in information that can manifest to further distort the truth. The propagandists can use this public perception to manipulate and influence the public's view and opinions. The power of visual images and symbols or symbolism and influence to make the narratives also and to distort reality. Images like photographs, videos, films they made, posters can evoke a powerful emotional narrative in the minds of the audience, like the propaganda films made by the North Korean government about their military force and how they their missiles and their strength and everything else is total. The images give the manipulate the whole sense. These visual messages give the propagandists a method to stop critical thinking process to make individuals more comfortable to manipulate. These methods for distorting the truth by using fabrication to narratives, manipulating context and using imagery and symbolic language. Today, individuals can be more effective to recognise and distrust information with research and understanding which will have a negative impact of propaganda in society. The next important factor is manipulation of emotions and beliefs. Manipulation of emotions. Well, propaganda undermines the truth and democratic by false narratives, distorting the truth and interfering with the principles of accountability and distorting information regarding decision making. These are different aspects that affect democratic or democracy for society. Censorship and information control. Censorship in internet is prominent in many countries that allow people information that follows a strict censorship code. By censoring independent media outlets, restricting access to information relevant to society, these regimens manipulate public perception and stop opposition for their agendas, controlling people by making and limiting their ability to make well-informed choices. And then also disinformation and misinformation campaigns. Deliberately spreading misinformation and disinformation can confuse the narratives to deceive the public, undermining trust and creating uncertainty and distrust will create a positive outcome for the propagandists. Manipulation of electrical processes. Propaganda can influence electrical outcomes by manipulating public perception and hanging a voter base. In recent times, Trump has fabricated information for himself, becoming president for a second time by influencing people with his narrative that all media is false. Putin in Russia just puts a censorship on all Western media by blocking newspapers, television, internet with a limited block, only allowing information that is pro-Russian. In fact, propagandists can divert elections to have specific candidates or political parties. Another really important factor in propaganda is polarization and divisiveness. By fostering a climate of hate and hostility, with no dialogue to make efforts to build a conscious and govern effectively. So it completely divides nations, people, countries, society. An erosion of trust in institutions. With a democratic system, propaganda undermines that trust in society through the media, government, and electrical systems by creating false narratives, stories on their integrity of governments. There is a lack of transparency of view and no democracy by manipulating information, distorting the truth, as discussed, and undermining trust in democratic processes and integrity. With critical thinking, connected thought, and media literacy can protect and safeguard democratic principles against the erosion of visual manipulation. Other psychological techniques used in propaganda, which is very important. Emotional association. While propagandists spread this message with a positive and negative emotions involving the feeling of happiness, achievement, and hospitality by producing an emotional response that influence the minds and deeds, making favourable public opinion to increase to their agenda. There's also a thing which I researched and looked at books called the bandwagon effect. To encourage individuals to support with their cause, to adopt their beliefs, making the bandwagon effect to gain positive feedback from public opinion. Propagandists manipulate emotions through fear, psychological techniques for advancement of specific agendas or narratives. With society having a better understanding of these tactics, individuals can become more vigilant and resistant to the emotional manipulation from propaganda, which is very important. The dehumanization, which happened in World War II, and it's happened in many countries, the Jews were classified as human beings, right? And this is happening in countries today where people have been belittled and dehumaned and ostracized from their society or from their country. Well, this is what I've written. Propaganda dehumanizes and ostracizes certain groups or individuals by depicting them as inferior, less than human. Therefore, denying them of any humanity and dignity. Hitler's Nazi Party did this to the Jewish people during World War II, where they had no rights, were subjected to cruel, horrible conditions, torture, and they were portrayed as subhuman, as stated. By depicting these groups as fundamentally different from the rest of society, can create a division and an ostracization from society to these individuals. Propagandists create a division and prejudice and racism. In summary, dehumanizing propaganda has a far-reaching consequence, including discrimination, violence, and erosion of empathy within society. Care. By identifying the hazards of dehumanization and researching the discriminatory factor and racism views and values, individuals can work towards building a more inclusive, caring society for us all. Erosion of democracy and civil liberties, which is very important. Propaganda undermines democracy through censorship and vote repression by controlling access to information, manipulating public opinion again, and weakening the democratic process. These factors are often devoted by authoritarian regimes and anti-democratic forces to continue power and manipulate the population. The erosion of the democratic values and principles will erode into a society that has no freedom and liberties to prosper as a society. To sum up, the erosion of democracy and the civil liberties causes a danger to the fundamental principles of freedom, equity, and justice. It reduces the basic framework of a democratic governance and presents a significant barrier to reaching a fair and equitable society. Affecting these challenges demands a combined effort to protect democratic values, safeguard civil liberties, and hold responsible those who attempt to undermine them. Next category, it's important, censorship. Propagandists utilise censorship to control the stream of information and silence opposing voices or parties. By controlling the censorship, objective media outlets, crucial journalists and opposition voices, propaganda controls the narrative and controls public perception according to agenda. It is a democracy, freedom of speech and media, and essential points of governments, enabling citizens to engage in a meaningful political discourse and participate in the democratic process, whereas propaganda stops freedom and erodes a foundation of democracy for the authoritarian rule. George Orwell's book 1984 is an excellent example of society controlled by authoritarian government or authorities. It is important to comprehend the link between censorship and propaganda to identify and reduce the negative impact in society. To oppose censorship, there must be a commitment to safeguarding freedom of speech, advancing media literacy, and developing a contrasted and inclusive public dialogue that permits individuals to analyse information critically and oppose manipulation. After all this, my conclusion on why propaganda is evil. In my essay, I've explored why propaganda is evil, what is propaganda, understanding propaganda, the distortion of truth and reality, the manipulation of emotions and the beliefs, the dehumanization and ostracism of people, and the erosion of democratic and civil liberties. Propaganda can be considered inherently evil by manipulating the truth, emotions, and society narratives to serve its own purpose. It distorts the truth and reality by presenting false information and fabricating the narratives, then manipulating people's emotions through far and hostile and dehumanises certain groups to be discrimination and violence. Propaganda destabilises democracy by censoring information I'll say that again. Censoring information and covering dissent, evil, and erodes the faith in associations and creates division and opposes within society. Propaganda, manipulation of truth and emotions, combined with the sabotage of democratic principles, demonstrates its malicious nature and its capacity to inflict harm on its individuals and society. In conclusion, society must mean to oppose propaganda and utilise educational material, books and media, and use critical thinking processes to combat the evil nature in how propaganda spreads throughout society. We've also, I've gone through a lot of books, and these are my references. Propaganda by Edward Bernays, 1928. He's considered a father of public relations, and the book explains the techniques behind propaganda. Manufacturing Consent, The Political Economy of Mass Media by Edward S. Herman and Noam Chomsky, 1988. This influenced work examines how propaganda operates within democratic societies, particularly through the mass media. And the Antimony of Fascism by Robert O. Paxton, 2004. While not solely focusing on propaganda, this book analyses the role propaganda is the rise of fascism and the manipulation of public opinion. The True Believer, Thoughts on the Narrative by Thoughts on the Nature of Mass Movements by Eric Hoffer, 1951. Hoffer explores the psychological behind mass movements and the role of propaganda in mobilizing followers. And there's another one, Propaganda, Power and Persuasion, edited by David Welsh, 2013. This book accommodates an exposition at the British Library and provides a comprehensive overview of propaganda throughout history. And Propaganda, The Formation of the Men's Attitudes by Jacques Ellul, Ellul, 1965. He explores the techniques used in propaganda to manipulate public opinion and distort reality. The Assault on Truth. This is Freud's Suppression of Seduction of Theory by Jeffrey Mosmuth, 1984. And The Manipulated Mind, Brainwashing Conditioning by Denise Wynn, 1983. This book examines how individuals' perceptions of truth and reality can be manipulated through various psychological techniques, which I didn't discuss, including these used in propaganda. Psychological, it can be emotions, as I talked about. And then there's also Propaganda and Persuasion by Garth S. Lovett and Victoria O'Donnell, 2006. This textbook provided a comprehensive overview of propaganda, including a role in distorting truth and the perception of reality. Now, I hope you enjoyed my assignment on why propaganda is evil and what we can do to stop it. And yeah, my name's Jared Dwyer, and I thank you for watching.